What is going on, beautiful? We're going to talk about a misunderstanding that I see people are having when I talk about highest vision. So this is something that came up with clients and also in the highest vision experience. I got a question on this in the end, which is something like, David, what about rest and integration? Like, how do you make sure that with all this expansion that you're activating or that you're going into, how do you make sure that your system gets enough time and space to actually integrate, to digest, so that you don't spin into like more and more activation and into the state where afterwards you deeply crash? And that question for me is based on a misunderstanding of what highest vision and following the expansion means and what it doesn't mean. And so the misunderstanding is a false duality between following the energy flow and allowing yourself to expand, believing that that is in contradiction to allowing yourself to rest and integrate, which in my experience is absolutely no contradiction. So ultimately what following your highest vision to me means is learning to honestly follow the energy flow that is moving through you. And sometimes that will be doing a bunch of new things and like following your excitement and taking leaps. But it will also mean allowing yourself to rest, going to the sauna, sitting and doing absolutely nothing. So there is no contradiction there. And I believe the misunderstanding comes from, our language is very much based on duality. So we have expansion and contraction, right? We have the inhale and the exhale. And so when I talk about expansion, the misunderstanding is almost as if I were to say, like, always breathe in and make yourself bigger, but never breathe out. There is a form of how we go into this duality of expanding and contracting that I believe we are adding unnecessarily. So you might know this experience that if you have some experience of deep euphoria or something incredible happens in your life, something like super heart opening, that very often afterwards you will go into a state of like contracting more deeply. And that is what I would call upper limiting, which is a safety mechanism of our nervous system, where because we expanded beyond what we are used to, our nervous system habitually wants us to go back to a more contracted habitual place. And that is a form of contraction that I would say is not necessary, where we can learn to follow the expansion without going into this habitual contraction. And that is different from the contraction of inhale, exhale, or of activity and rest. So there are natural cycles and rhythms that are absolutely part of following your highest vision. So for example, I love resting. I love going to the sauna. I love taking amazing care of my body and having enough downtime to integrate and digest everything that I learn and experience. But I don't buy into, now I've had the next most profound experience. Now I need to go through a period of time where I feel more contracted. Like, that's a form of cycle that most of us go through most of the time, right? Like if you talk to people about how their life goes, they would say something like, well, it ebbs and flows, and sometimes I feel good and sometimes I don't feel so good. And there's an experience of duality in there. Oh, look, my pretty color screen went out. Here we go. There's a form of experiencing duality in there that I don't believe is actually necessary, that is more created from the mind, where there's some sort of, as I said, like a safety mechanism that pulls us back into our into a range of well-being and ecstasy that feels safer than going beyond that. So the bottom line of what I want to share here is, if you experience that following your highest excitement and your highest vision leads you to spinning out of control, where like the energy gets higher and higher but it stops being grounded, that means there's some sort of pattern that is being activated in that moment that is not following your highest vision, that is not just following the energy, but it's like, for example, like adding some mental layers on top of this. So for example, let's say you get a message from a potential client that they're interested in joining your work, and you get super excited about it, and then your mind starts like projecting into the future, like, oh my god, and they're going to say yes, and then the next person's going to come, and you start adding mental projections onto your experience, and you sort of get into this high that inevitably leads to a crash afterwards, because you're not in touch anymore with reality. Or you're at a dance event and you go into wilder and wilder dance and movement, but it's no longer deeply grounded. You're no longer actually connected to your body and what's moving inside of you. You're more like following an idea of what you're supposed to be doing in the space, and like what being high vibe or whatever idea you have, how that is supposed to look like. And then of course this can happen, that you spin out of a sense of groundedness and self-regulation, following some sort of idea of like following your excitement. But as I said, like that's not actually following the energy. You're in those moments, you actually lose touch with the energy, and you start adding things that come from patterns. So that is absolutely not what I'm talking about when I say following your highest vision or your highest excitement. Those are patterns that come up. And I can say, for me personally, my pattern used to be that I like, whenever I would get into a state of like feeling more excitement and more energy, that my system would very quickly go like, oh, but like now I need downtime, and now I need to rest, and now I need to make sure that it isn't too much. So for me, it's been a really powerful learning experience to notice that that's just a thought that's coming up, and I can check in that moment, is that actually true or not? Do I actually need rest right now, or is that an old story that I have, something that maybe at some point I needed, but right now I might not? And so everyone's patterning is different, and it's very useful and powerful to know what your habitual pattern is. Like, is your habitual pattern that you spin into like more and more energy, but it stops being grounded? Well, then it's good to notice that, and in those moments be like, okay, let me slow down for a moment and check with my body what is actually going on, and what is my highest vision and highest excitement right now. And maybe then you notice in those moments, well, actually right now it's chilling and doing nothing, and that can feel expanding as well. So rest can feel deeply expansive. Rest is not a form of contraction. I can rest and be like, whoa, this is opening me up even further. Or your pattern is more similar to what I had, where it's like, whenever more energy would come in, your system would go like, whoa, 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 like we need to slow this down. This is way too fast. We cannot handle this. We need to shut ourselves off the world and be by ourselves until everything is calm again. If that's your patterning, then it's great to challenge that as well and be like, does that feel true for me in this present moment? And if yes, then great, then follow it. But if it doesn't feel true, then you can learn to ride those waves that life is giving you further, and just be more with the intensity, and actually learn to like relearn that your body is much more capable of being with high levels of energy than you might have been used to. Okay, so bottom line of what I want to share here is that rest and integration is not at all in opposition to following your highest excitement and highest vision. Following your highest vision simply means that you start following the waves that life is giving you. And if that wave is like doing new stuff, you do it. And if that wave is resting and doing nothing, both are super valid and welcome, and you can expand into both. Okay, so resting does not mean contraction. So let me know if this was helpful. If you have any things you want to share, if you enjoyed this, drop something in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. With that, I'm wishing you the most epic of days, and I shall talk to you very soon.